It's the first Friday in the month of May. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Neota Egbe.
Good morning and welcome to the program. I do want to say, thank God it's Friday. And it's good to see Buki back. It's Friday. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
Yes, indeed. It's good to see you too, Malkwe and Neota. Well, I want to say thank God it's Friday. Finally, I didn't get to wake up early on Saturday morning. So thank God it's Friday. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Kuka.
Thank you. Can you guys just cheer up, right? It's May 5. And guess what? It's the King's coronation tomorrow in the UK. I don't know, well, whoever is excited or not about that one. Laolu Akande, good morning and welcome.
I actually thought, Aya, you were going to pick it up from where Buki left it, that she's not going to wake up early tomorrow morning, knowing that you will have to wake up early to get into the studio for Sunrise, the Saturday edition. But hey, talking about people that have to go through certain things, while we're all celebrating, thank God it's Friday, and all the things that we have to celebrate, there are those who wake up every morning wondering, when would I be able to go back home? When would I be able to find some kind of relief from all that I've had to go through? And those are those people who have been internally displaced for one reason or the other. Insecurity and the floods of last year, and I understand the rains have started, so the floods are likely to kick in. How prepared are these people or have they been evacuated to safer ground? But put that to one time, let's focus on the children in these different families who have had to go through one thing or the other, moved from their homes, moved into camps for insecurity or for flood reasons. Many of them out of school, many of them not sure where their next meal will come from, many of them not sure where the next piece of tablet of medication will come from because of all the things they have to face. So while we're celebrating, while we're thanking God it's Friday and thanking God to see another day, I'm sure they're also thanking God that they can see another day and hoping that one way or the other, they would find some kind of relief in the course of their living.
Yeah, so I'm not very certain as to, the name of the organization now, because before now I didn't know about its existence. Something I'm supposed to be looking at, an organization within the Nigerian government space, looking after refugees.
The Refugees Commission.
Yeah, so that is new. That's totally new to me. I always thought, okay, humanitarian affairs was set up because they felt NEMA was inadequate, and also because this government came up with the social and the social intervention schemes, and they needed a ministry to warehouse that. So, but we've since seen that NEMA is now under humanitarian affairs, and we saw them intervene very recently, even in as far away as Sudan, even though former ambassadors have said that is a little anomalous because they believe that the embassies in those countries should be able to handle that. But looking at where we currently are, the fact that even though some people say we're in a war situation. I saw my colleague Kayla do a report 2 days ago, and she reported that Nigeria is at war on many fronts. Is it trying to, get rid of bandits in the northwest? Is it trying to get rid of Boko Haram in the northeast? So many different battles to, look after. And as a result of that, we now have internally displaced persons camps scattered all over our country. And this is happening, more often than we can even catch up with. I mean, Benue, for instance, in Kaduna, in Borno, in a number of places where people ought to be living in their homes. People are in internally displaced persons camps. Even here in the Federal Capital Territory, migrants have come from different places, displaced by different types of situations, and they have to stay in camps. So what happens to the children of those people who are now forced to stay in camps? So we saw that report yesterday talking about, catering to children from people who are internally displaced. And it's commendable that if they did exist, we would have been asking, where were you all along? Why didn't you intervene sooner? Why is this announcement coming now? It's already towards the end of this particular administration, but I don't think that this knows any administration. This should be something that, as long as we have the situation on our hands, as long as these people are in camps, that thinking needs to continue as to how we look after the children to ensure that the education doesn't suffer. Because as the major respondent was saying yesterday, education is a right, and the children, should not need, their rights should not be abridged as a result of that. So let us hope that, indeed, while this has happened, that they will put their money where their mouth is. I also know about that intervention by the trying to remember her name, Mrs. Miriam Uwais. She has an out-of-school program. I think this one is overseen by the Vice President's office. Out-of-school children. These ones are not necessarily displaced by conflict. They are children who are out of school, perhaps as a result of the financial situation of their parents, or parents who really do not care and are not existent in these children's lives. So it will be wonderful to see all of these programs harmonized and see, well, one is catering to those who are in IDP camps, and the other catering to children who are just roaming around anyway. And I think that is done in collaboration with the state government. In any case, education is on the concurrent list. In other words, both the federal and state governments have, jurisdiction over education. So let us hope that all of these jurisdictions will be synergized, and that the children who really need to be in school, the children who need to achieve their full potential, will not be shortchanged as a result of the inadequacies currently within our system. Bukola and Ayo.
Yes, indeed, Mark, where we hope that those children will not be shortchanged. But more importantly, I think we need to look at, the situation that we're dealing with in Nigeria's north. If we look at the socioeconomic landscape of Nigeria's north, what really are we dealing with? We have many IDP camps hosting thousands of people living in squalid conditions. We have problems of them being exposed to insecurity. They're susceptible to attacks. We have the problem of them being also, vulnerable to radicalization. We have the problem of the reproductive health of the women and the young children that are living there. We have the problem of period poverty. How are the young girls there going through their period? Something as simple as, a menstrual cycle of a woman that she's supposed to, be in, she's supposed to take care of her personal hygiene at that particular time of her life. But the young children there, we hear they're going through, I can't describe it with words, but it's only left to the imagination. So if there's this intervention by the Nigerian Commission for Refugees, it's spot on. But are we looking at a situation where the northern part of the country is now a big refugee outposts? Is something for the subnationals to think about. What really is the intervention that subnationals are providing in the face of the socioeconomic and political challenge in the northern part of the country? Is something that they should reflect on. And we cannot deal with it without, providing data. The other day we're talking about the northern part of the country and the need for, the tackling insecurity to be data-driven. What really is fueling insecurity? Is it a lack of investment in education? The other day somebody was saying about a country that has made insurgency, and the problem of guerrilla warfare unfashionable because they have invested massively in education. So what are the problems, the socioeconomic problems fueling insurgency and banditry? Why did insurgency dovetail into banditry in the northwestern part of the country? So when we have all of that data, then the subnationals can plan. I hope that the National Human Rights Commission for Refugees would not just have as its mandate managing the affairs of refugees, but also beyond that, continuing education and then helping to resettle, these people in their original homeland, in their ancestral homeland, such that they can return to their normal lives. But a situation where the northern part of the country becomes a massive refugee outpost, that now has to be funded continually in a budget cycle. I think that leaves much to be desired, Ayo.
And just to put in context, when you say the northern part of Nigeria is being seen or perhaps even treated as a refugee outpost of sorts, let's reference the multidimensional poverty figures recently released by the NBS, and it'll tell you why what you're saying, the context within what you're saying is coming. What's also interesting about that data is that 67.5% of children are multidimensionally poor in Nigeria, 67.5%. And if you look at that data, it also brings to mind what former President Obasanjo also said, that look, whether we like it or not, we're building an army of refugees, so to speak, in the future if we don't take care. If we do not take care and prepare for the future of these kids. Now, what are the indices of this multidimensional poverty? 0 to 17-year-olds in Nigeria. Health, education, both of you and Maupe have mentioned that. Living standards, I think Nyota referenced that. Work and shocks. Child survival and development, all of these things are so encompassing. Now, when we now talk about the subnationals and what they're supposed to do, and the fact that they need data, they do have data now. If they didn't have it before, they have it now. And guess what? I'm almost certain that the World Bank, UNICEF, and so many others of these institutions will have these things. Now we are in transition. State governments are literally in transition, whether it's incoming or the second-term governors. We are in transition. There are going to be perhaps some cabinet changes of commissioners, assistants, and all those things. How significantly will that affect progress or none of it in the process of ensuring that we preserve our future? Because the children are the future. The 17-year-old today, in 10 years, is 27. Possibly married with 2 kids. In 20 years, that fellow is 37, possibly a government official or something. If we do not give them a reason to live, they will find one for themselves. There are 2 ways to it. Look at these, the pictures you're seeing. Bukola, you mentioned people living in squalid positions. That is squalid environments. This is just one. And this is the image many people in the West have of Nigeria or even African countries. Does that mean that they do not have such in their countries? Of course not, they do. But the images such as these, such kinds of images as we are seeing, only lays credence to some of these things. Can we value human lives? First of all, by giving them something to live for, not just barely surviving, but actually living. Nyota.
Indeed, Ayo, the things we have to go through every day, the things that government needs to do, if we go by the Constitution, the number 1 responsibility of government is the security and welfare of its citizens. So many commissions, so many organizations set up by different government organizations to take care of its citizens, but how functional are they? With the multiplicity of duties that they have to do, at what point do they all intertwine? I mean, knowing that the National Commission for Refugees started in 1989, then later it was migrants and internally displaced persons were added to that commission's responsibility, all midwifed by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. At what point do we see all of these agencies come together to ensure that the Nigerian people fully enjoy the benefits of being governed? Well, we'll take a moment and we'll come back while you're pondering on that to look at what some of the dailies have for us today. Don't go.
Well, taking a look at the day's dailies, let's start with the Guardian newspapers for you. Study routes to Japa, that's how they start this morning. Over $4 billion. Yes, you heard right. $4 billion spent on overseas education in 8 years amid poor funding, neglect of public schools. It's a big story that The Guardian has done this morning. You'll find details on pages 4 and 5. Indeed, experts in education have continued to speak on how do we get a fraction of this money invested here in our own education system, because apparently Nigerians want to be educated. They're willing to pay for this education. How do we, balance those who are willing to pay and those who do not have to pay in such a way that we're able to harness that and make sure that our education system, particularly our tertiary education system, is viable. Big question. You might want to read that story on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspapers. You also have a number of other stories here. Fresh hurdles for air cargo. SACO, NACO raise charges by 100%. Tinubu promises to fight corruption, protect judges from vices. Reps ignore outrage. Okay, Buhari's 23.7 trillion naira extra budgetary spending. The story is on page 6 of the paper. And as the coronation of King Charles happens tomorrow, apologize, compensate for colonization, Aborigines tell King Charles III. So that story is also somewhere inside the Guardian newspapers. We'll leave it there for the paper.
The Vanguard newspaper is the one I have here. Escape from Sudan. With gunfire all over, we thought we'd never see home again. Returnees tell tales of war. That story continues on page 5. But let's look at some of the things the writers here. I had said my last prayers waiting for the worst. A student. We were sexually harassed, broke, stole to survive. Some other students speaking. These are the tales of the students. We paid money to be allowed to urinate. We paid to bath, brush teeth, etc. Nigerian officials starved us for 12 hours. We literally saw death, but Nigeria came through. I feared for my children's safety in Sudan, Nigerian father. Refusal of Nigeria missions to pay visa fees delayed our evacuation. FG gives each returnee 100,000 naira cash. Asman heir to airlift second batch. The tales of wolves that Nigerians had to go through. Seeing some of them there.
Most important thing right now is
that they're home.
Yeah.
You know, watching through the footage that our reporter came back with, could actually see the joy on their faces. Those that were willing to talk. Above the nameplate, swearing in of Tinubu before tribunal's judgment makes no sense. When Icon speaks, Tinubu will be sworn in. Avoid murky waters of politics. Keyamo counters. That's on page 26. Election dispute, allow judiciary decide. Gowon tells Atiku Obi others. And this one, kudos to our troops. Troops kill 79 terrorists in Northwest, rescue 136 abducted victims is on page 3. And today, the Ekweremadus will know their fate today. That's on page 6. And Channels TV will keep you updated on what's going on there. And seeing that today is Friday, a bit of sports. Golden Eaglets have to be more efficient. That's on the back page at the Under-17 AFCON. But then, Mr. and Mrs., before we let you go, some bit of laughs here. You finished a big bowl of pounded yam just 2 hours ago, and you're hungry again. That's frightening. More so when you described it as a delicate situation. That's coming from Mrs. And Mr. replies, it's a delicate matter when I'm hungry, and delicacy is the only solution. It's all about delicate situations. Over to you, Buki and Ayo.
Some of the things that we take for granted, you know, some people don't have access to those luxuries.
It's a delicacy situation.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. should be grateful that they can laugh over that. You know, Nigerians in Sudan had, you know, very little opportunities to laugh, but we're back that the first batch is home and we're expecting more of them. And the Daily Trust also focuses on the Sudan situation. And this is the big headline. May Nigeria never experience war. Sudan returnees pray.
And I say amen.
Amen. Take a look at the riders. We slept in the open for 8 days.
Jesus.
About 3,000 Nigerians still stranded. 3,000 Nigerians still stranded. So all of those experiences that those returned home are recounting, 3,000 may still be experiencing. So they deserve our prayers at this point in time. More aircraft needed for evacuation. as ascribed to the federal government. We hope that more public-spirited Nigerians can rise to the occasion, as Air Peace has done here and had done in the past. So that's it for that. But we are very grateful that, you know, the first batch has arrived. Let's go above the nameplate and see this one. Just to the extreme right-hand corner. I was forced to marry 3 Boko Haram terrorists, says rescued Chibok girl. Wow. 2 more have been rescued, by the way, and that brings the number of outstanding to 96. So it leaves little to the imagination about what the remaining girls in captivity are going through. And our prayers at this point in time, suffice it to say, are with Leah Sharibu, the remaining Dapchi girl. Take a look at this one as well. Trafficked Nigerian women in Iraq beg for evacuation. So the Sudan situation is, turning the searchlight, albeit on other, Nigerians who are in one form of difficult situation or the other. So sometimes, going outside the country to seek greener pastures, Nigerians often discover that, the pasture is not so green on the other side.
Well, it's really my own admonition for anyone who would want to do anything. Please, whatever action you're going to take, just test the waters one way, find out all the information you can, because you don't start a business without some sensible feasibility study. So why take a gamble on the entirety of life?
Of your life. Without
doing the proper thing. And then I also remember a guest of ours, Mr. Luwake, talking about the fact that whichever embassy, whichever country you get to, there is a Nigerian embassy there. Go register your presence. If you register, at least whatever comes, God forbid anything happens, at least you are registered. Nigeria knows that you are there. So I think it's good admonition that we shouldn't gamble with our lives.
We shouldn't.
Our lives are a lot more about other people than about ourselves.
Well said. I recall the NIDCOM chairperson saying that, or she or somebody else, that the education standards, they are not quite as enviable as what we have in Nigeria. So it speaks a lot to the motivation of these Nigerian young persons, choosing to pitch their tents with Sudan where education is concerned. But let's leave it there for Daily Trust as that conversation continues.
Yeah, segue to the Leadership Friday this morning. 24 days to go. That's the lead of the Leadership newspaper. Northern youths allege plots to stop Tinubu's inauguration. Finger Labour, IPOP petition IGP, DSS demand Ajero's arrest. It's cheap blackmail. NLC president replies. Enough said about that. Story is on page 4. Right under that major story, you find those pictures of Nigerian students and others on return from Sudan right there. And the headline, we saw hell at borders, not even in Sudan. We saw hell at borders, ascribed to Nigerian returnees. Find the details of that on continue on page 7. Right under that story is the issue that Nyota and Malwe have also highlighted. Organ harvesting, UK court sentences Ekweremadu wife today. The story is on page 7 of the paper. And this interesting one on the front page, how to shield judges from corruption, ascribed to Tinubu. Story is on page 4.
How to shield judges from corruption. I would like to study that.
It's on page 4.
It's on page 4. Okay, later on. Flip to This Nigeria. Have we taken This Nigeria? We haven't taken This Nigeria. So this is it. Presidential poll. Respect sanctity of court. Gowon cautions litigants. Urges Nigerians to accept tribunal's verdicts. And on the flip side of the argument, some others are saying, look, it's not right, to conduct swearing in where the cases have not been determined in court, and that conversation is continuing.
That conversation has been on since 1979, Second Republic. So unless we adjust the laws, let's take that canvassing, so to speak, to the National Assembly. Unless we adjust the laws and the Constitution to the effect, Nothing can be done.
Just as the conversation on restructuring continues, take a look at this one. Attacker's murder, court admits defendants, 2 statements in evidence. So the trial of that young girl continues. Tension, right under that one, tension as gunmen kill 3 mobile police officers in Anambra State. The security situation in the southeast is still a talking point, and we hope that, that is reined in by the current administration. And lastly, Nigeria's unity not negotiable, says Tinubu, the president-elect, unveils magistrate court in Port Harcourt as Wike raises alarm over neglect of New Rivers campus law school, I believe that is. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Nigerian News Direct has this one on its front page. Anti-party activities shake up as APC OK suspension of former governors, minister over party bigwigs. Other party bigwigs. Shake up as APC OK suspension of former governors, minister, other party bigwigs. Find that story on page 3. Nnamani, Ojikalu, Unyama, enlisted. Interesting. The details are on page 3. Maybe there are others. And right above the nameplate, and this one is concerning mineral theft. Stop encroaching mining sites. FG warns traditional rulers. That sounds unbelievable. From the federal government, through the states, to the local government, and now traditional rulers. From the federal government speaking directly to traditional rulers. I'm wondering how... Anyway, well... That's the story. Find the details of it on page 2 of the Nigerian News Direct, bringing us to an end of a look at some of the dailies today. We're back right after now to begin to take on the issues we have lined up for you today. Do stay with us.
There's a need for a national consensus, or at least an elite consensus. The political elite, the religious elite, and the business elite must agree that our country will fail completely if we do not accept and implement an ethical revolution. One where we establish a national work ethic of honesty, of hard work, of thrift, and the deferment of gratification. It is what is taught and learned that shapes the character of individuals and nations. But it's not just teaching. Governments must also lead this ethical revolution by rewarding ethical behavior and ensuring speedy punishment for misconduct. The religious elite, our religious elite, must reinforce the ethical direction agreed by showing that wealth and influence are built by hard work and diligence and the deferment of gratification, and not just by miracles.
Welcome back. And today we're looking at, how do you put it now? Okay, let's take it this way. As the Buhari administration begins to wind down, it's time to do stock taking. We'll look at some of the key players and how they have contributed to the effectiveness of this administration and what the future might hold ahead of it. And today we're starting out with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. What did he bring to the table? Plus, the essence of a book, Osinbajo Strides, defining moment of an innovative leader. Okay. You might be wondering, is he in the studio? His right-hand man is here. Mr. Laolu Akande, Senior Special Assistant Media and Publicity to the President, Office of the Vice President. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Indeed, good morning and welcome.
Welcome. Let me start by asking you, how's the journey been?
Well, I will say first and foremost that it's such a great privilege to be able to serve your country, and even much more for me personally to be able to work with somebody like Professor Yemi Osinbajo, a man of great inspiration, competence, character, and capacity. And of course, serving under the president, who clearly everybody knows, has the deep interest of this country and a very honest, straightforward shooter. So it's been quite a pleasant experience.
Mm. What would you say were the highest moment? I mean, if you could just give us as brief as possible, the highest moment and the lowest moment of the Vice President in office.
Well, I think the highest moments apparently will be when he acted as president. The times that he acted as president, for me personally, would be the highest moment, because of course then you are able to do quite a few things that you felt are important, and to show clearly, that we can take this country to the place of our dreams, with consistent leadership, with the leadership that has great vision, which also you see in the last 8 years with what the president has done, especially in the area of infrastructure, social investment, and the way we have changed the narrative around corruption to show that clearly, this is something that is not acceptable. And even though there's still a lot more to do, but clearly, the Buhari administration has put this country on the right trajectory.
It would be good to just state here that we're looking forward to the day we'll have Professor Osinbajo sit on that seat and have a conversation with us and really talk towards. But seeing that he is who he is, you used words that we had repeated here yesterday, character, competence, capacity, and experience were some of the words repeated here yesterday, and you used those words to describe the Vice President. And there are some who would wonder, how much of the character, how much of the experience, I mean, starting out as a special assistant or special advisor, I think, in 1998, how much of the character, how much of the experience came to play in the service of Nigeria, in the service to Nigeria in these 8 years?
Okay, for you talking for the Vice President.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So who started as in 1988, around 1988, as special advisor to the then Attorney General of Federation. Of course, I think about a decade after became Commissioner for Justice in Lagos, and then Vice President. I think clearly one of the things that in my view stand him out is the kind of preparation that he has gotten, over the years, and this shows in how he handles stuff, the hands-on experience that you get, and then the ability to closely supervise what it is that you want to achieve. Now, everybody knows, the great work that he was able to do when he was Attorney General. I think it was only maybe yesterday or 2 days ago when Mr. Okocha was referring to some of the great things that he did, and he said that Yemi did that. When you see a consistent commentation about somebody, whether they are his peers, professional peers, whether they are ordinary people, whether they are former leaders, whether they are journalists. Everybody's saying the same thing about somebody. It's just a clear evidence that the man not only has the capacity to do it, he has the competence to do it, and he has the character. You know, he understands that people must be at the center of governance, and he understands that justice must be at the center of governance. And this is reflected all through his public service since 1988 up until now.
Well, I sincerely wished, as my colleague is wishing, that this conversation were with the Vice President himself. And I know that in the past, you know, he did grant interviews, sit down one-on-ones. I was privileged once to have that opportunity with him on a sister program, Hard Copy. And it's very interesting, his insights into the problems, the challenges confronting Nigeria, and what will be some of the solutions. I think that was very early on in this administration. The conversation I'm talking about happened in 2016. And since that time, he hasn't spoken much on a one-on-one interview. Yes, he speaks quite frequently at public fora, grants the interview after a program if a journalist manages to catch him off guard without the security agencies saying, enough now. But that one-on-one has been absent. For somebody who is as imbued with as much talent as he has, and looking at the position, the role that he has had to play, oftentimes there is no constitutional role for the Vice President of Nigeria, except that which the President decides to give, or where he has to act in place of the President, as he had the opportunity to when the President was away on a medical leave. Looking at that, how difficult has that been to manage for him? Do you think that was also a major challenge for him, looking at the fact that this is a man of brilliance? Anywhere he's been given work to do, you can see that he puts all of himself into it. So would we say that, that has also been a challenge of sorts for him, just waiting to be given something to do, for his contributions to be able to show through?
You're right in the sense that as a vice president, you are limited, in terms of executive powers, but also the vice president has quite a few responsibilities, including those that are even stated in the Constitution, including being the chairman of the National Economic Council. And then, of course, it's also by statute chairman of the National Council on Privatization. I've got a number of other statutory functions. But I get your point in terms of the difference that exists between being number one and being number two. So as number two, your real assignment is to support the president. And to advise, the president, and to take, your instructions and directives from number one. And I think he has discharged that, has acquitted himself very, very creditably in that aspect. And on the assignments for which he has been given over the course of 8 years so far, I'm sure that many Nigerians agree that he has done an excellent job, starting in 2016 when he had to pioneer the implementation of the social investment program, until, when he was managing, he was the chairman of the economic management team in the first term, before the strategy was changed in the second term, and several other, assignments, including also chairing the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which tried to bring in some significant reforms to doing businesses in Nigeria. And you will remember that then we moved up. Nigeria moved up about 39 places up the ranking of the World Bank in ease of doing business for 2 years back to back. Even then, Nigeria was ranked as one of the top 10 countries in the world that are reforming their economies in a very respectable and recognized manner. So, yes, there are limitations, clearly. Like I said, the difference between being number one and number two is quite huge. But I think he has managed to make himself very busy with the constitutional roles and delegations from the president. And I think it was General Gowon that said recently that one of the things that he says about the vice president is that he brings a collaborative approach to governance, and that in his own view, Professor Osinbajo has been the most effective vice president in Nigeria's history. So yes, there are limitations, but clearly this man, the vice president, has done an excellent job, made himself busy, and impacted lives of Nigerians in a positive way. And I think the facts are there for people to see.
Well, it's not always been a smooth ride. There have been, very, very bumpy political positions that, we've seen in our polity. The president and his vice, or let's say his deputy, because they say you don't say vice, and his vice president have always tried to maintain one government. It's one of the reasons why when I think you and a number of other people were hired, were hearing that, oh, you were special assistant to the president in the office of the vice president. And that face of oneness is what they have tried to keep throughout the 8 years. Initially in 2019, or preceding 2019, people were wondering if the president ran again, was Vice President Osinbajo still going to be his vice presidential candidate? Well, the president swiftly answered that question. But there had been some delicate situations, especially those that border on the unity of Nigeria, talking about the North-South divide, talking about Christianity versus Islam, which, that dichotomy really ought to be non-existent. But these sort of things have reared their head when we've faced situations of conflict where people felt that the president wasn't speaking up enough, especially against the herdsmen crisis that had taken up many parts of the north-central states. And they expected that the vice president was going to be a little more vocal, and that if he wasn't going to be vocal in terms of expressing how Southerners felt to the president, that perhaps they were going to see him resign. Those kinds of moments, how were they for him? You have been his spokesperson. Have you perhaps witnessed firsthand perhaps some of the difficulties, or will I say the intricacies in government at that time? How were they for him? Can you tell us?
Well, I mean, what I would say is that the president and the vice president have done what, in my view, my honest view, they've done very well in showing an example of how, people at that level ought to operate. I think they share a common purpose, to do things right. And yes, there will always be times when there will be a little issue here and there. And what the vice president has always, done in terms of talking about some of the fault lines is to say, look, I mean, the diversity, of which you speak, whether it is ethnic diversity, whether it's religious or regional diversity, whatever it is, that seems to be the difference, is meant or could be used, and we should turn it into advantage, because ultimately that is what it is. The more, the merrier. There is a way in which we should continue to try to take advantage of our size, for instance, and that has been his own attitude, to understand that, look, in any situation, the question is, what can you do to solve the problem? It's not a question of engaging in arguments or walking out of the situation. The people have elected you to a position for a tenure. They expect you to get stuff done. So yes, you will win some, you will lose some, but you ensure, and this is what the vice president has done, you ensure that of the things that you are asked to do, you do an excellent job. You do it as much as possible. You scale up the impact. For instance, when we did the social investment program in the first term, you know, we were able to impact millions. I think about 12 million Nigerians were touched, either by the Empower, where we got, in the first instance, about 500,000 otherwise unemployed graduates to get a job for 2 years. The program is still going on for every 2 years, where we gave a free meal to about 10 million primary school pupils in this country, where we ensured that over 2 million petty traders got some kind of collateral-free credit facility, and also the conditional cash transfer, which I think is now should be close to about 5 million Nigerians. You know, and all of these things require some very, you know, considerable hard work in even trying to identify how is it that you can get these resources directly in the hands of the beneficiaries. For the first time in Nigeria, you know, all these resources, all this, the money we are going from the coffers of government directly into the accounts of the beneficiaries. I mean, that took a lot of work. So my point is that there is a lot of work to be done when you have the opportunity. Yes, there will be issues, you know, there will be a few contentions here and there, but the important thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Why are you here? Why are you vice president? You are vice president because the people voted for you along with the president to do stuff. So what the vice president has done is to face his job and try to see whatever is possible for him to do. What can I contribute? How can I impact the lives of as many Nigerians as possible in this situation? That has always been his focus, and I've watched him very closely. At times when even some of us younger ones will be very heady, you know, he calms us down and say, hey, calm down. Let's do whatever we can do. And I think he has done a great job of that.
You know, in some quarters, the vice president is referred to as a star boy. And one of the quotes, one of the things he's been quoted as saying, especially in the build-up to the 2023 elections, was, it says, while at the side of President Muhammadu Buhari, I have seen firsthand the nuances and complexities of the challenges that confront us as a nation. Now, one of the challenges that confront Nigeria is the ability to communicate with the Nigerians, because what you're talking about how these resources were moved from the coffers of government directly to the citizens has been faulted in many quarters by Nigerians. Maybe a product of communication, but these are some of the nuances that Nigerians have had to deal with, and I'm sure the Professor Shibajo has had to deal with it as well. But in all of that, in the fact that there is barely any trust between the citizens and the government, how has he fared in communicating the truth that he knows? You've talked about him. How has he managed that?
Oh, well, I mean, I think one of the things that he does very well, you know, and again, this is something that you guys can bear out, is that he communicates, he connects with the Nigerian people. I think if there is one, in my personal view, if there is a Nigerian leader that understands, you know, how to connect with the Nigerian people, you must give it to the vice president. You know, and this explains why, you know, there is so much love, you know, I mean, from the people with him. You know, like I said, there is hardly any Nigerian today, you know, short of just being politically contentious. You know, of course, if you're a politician, you're going to get a lot of opponents whose job is just to oppose you regardless of the fact. But my point is that he has done a good job in communicating with Nigerians. And that is why Nigerians understand that he's different.
My colleagues in Lagos will come in, but just before they do it, this one thing, there are those who feel that he has been stifled even in communicating with the people, that he's not been allowed to connect with the people as he used to. A lot of people that used to see the vice president no longer see him. He doesn't go for events anymore. No. It's as though he's cocooned to a certain part. It's as though he's cocooned to a certain part of the Nigerian space. No. And he doesn't come out as he used to.
We just had a lecture. He was invited by the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies just a few weeks back in Kuru, where he spoke about ethnicity, you know, religion and politics. You know, he goes out very, very often. You know, well, of course, you know, we are ending down now, so you're not going to see the kind of engagement that you saw when we started. You know, but he's been good. He's done quite a number of lectures lately. You know, both at home and abroad, touching on very important issues issues, to the country, about our future, around climate change, our energy transition, and he still has interactions with governors. It goes out, it goes to a public event, at least every week, not less than 3, including church. He goes to church in this city, every Tuesday, he's out there. I mean, he's engaging. I don't think it's true that he's cocoon at all. Now, the truth of the matter is that, it is not everything that you want to say that you should say until the right time comes for you to say what you can say. It's, there's a saying in my language that it is not everything that the eye sees that the mouth says. A lot of things you have to take it in your stride. But keep your eye on the ball. Why am I here? What job am I supposed to do? Do that. And that's what the Vice President has done.
My colleagues in Lagos have some questions. Ayo, Bukola.
Yes, thank you, Nyota. Mr. Akande, coming off the back of Nyota's first question, I'm just looking at the names on the list of those who are authoring the book in honor of the Vice President. Osinbajo strides, and there are big names in journalism. Azu Shekwene is there, Richard Akinola is there, so it speaks to his work. But then again, Mr. Akande, how much of the disillusionment that Nigerians feel about, the Muhammadu Buhari administration, do you think has impacted on what this community and perhaps others feel about the sterling qualities of the Vice President as Vice President? Well, you say he is the best Vice President that Nigeria has ever produced. So how much of this disillusionment impacts on this career?
Yeah, well, it was General Gowon, by the way, who said that on Monday. General Gowon said that, in his view, Professor Yemi Osinbajo is the most effective Vice President Nigeria has ever had. Just to put that in perspective. But talking about what you describe as disillusionment, I think the way to look at it is that, it's a question of our attitude. So it's either the cup is half full or half empty. I think, there are things that has been done, which we can all agree about, by this administration. Significant things, by the way. And of course, there are also areas, in my view, where maybe we could have done better, but the important thing is that at the end of the day, you have enough to tell the people. Don't forget that the president, got elected twice in a popular, as a matter of fact, very well, credible elections twice. That speaks to something, that the people believe in him, not just in 2015. He also won convincingly in 2019. And while I will concede that, yes, you'll probably be able to say one or two things that maybe could have been done differently, but very clearly, and this cannot be denied, this administration has put this country in the right trajectory. And we are also blessed that it's the same political party that will be taking the nation forward in the next 4 years.
Well, interesting, Mr. Akande, that these views are coming at a time like this. And, well, there are quite a number of issues to look at, unfortunately. It's the valedictory sessions now, both for yourself and for Mr. Adeshina, who has also been a guest on this program. But, as we said, valedictory sessions have started coming up now. The book launch is one of those valedictory sessions, as well as the valedictory NEC meeting of the VP. Now, tell us something about that session. Well, it may have been an emotional session or whatever it is, but it's a multi-party, it was a multi-party event because there are many, different parties beyond just the APC that were represented, that are represented as governors in this country. And there are the challenges do not remonstrate in any way whatever comments may have come from the governors and whoever, all those other people who have been pouring encomiums on him. Navigating politics and governance. That must have been a challenge. How much of that was reflected at that valedictory meeting with the governors?
Okay, well, yeah. First and foremost, to say that during that meeting, I think last week, last Thursday, what struck me was how it all started, because it just towards the end of the meeting that some of the governors started to make those comments. It wasn't even on the agenda, and the consistency of what was said, started with I think the governor of Kaduna, and then the governor of Cross Rivers, and then basically going around, and then the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, the consistency of what everybody was saying. And one of the things I can tell you about the National Economic Council, which, of course, when we get the opportunity to talk much about, is that the National Economic Council is not anybody's court, really, because you are dealing with governors who are themselves, executive. They are the chief executives of their states. So it's different from a council where somebody appointed the members. This is a council of governors. So it's normally a truth-telling council. People can, governors often come out and say what it is they want to say. They really don't care, because they are also executive governors. They are there by election. So when you have from that council that kind of outpouring of commendation and accolades, it can't be anything but genuine. For instance, when Governor Aminu Tambuwal, who spoke very graciously about the vice president, he said that the vice president is a bridge builder. He said that he was a rallying force, in this country, that he was a unifier. Those are very, very important observations, even coming from somebody from another party, which is why, I say that in the 8 years that we have seen, the vice president clearly has won the hearts of Nigerians across political parties, across ethnicities, across religion. And I think it is because of what he represented. He was indeed that voice that was saying that, look, we can make this country greater and better. And in his stewardship as vice president in 8 years, I believe that Nigerians saw that. And that is why you have this groundswell of commendation from any quarter in this country regarding the work that the vice president has done.
Well, Mr. Akande, it's very interesting that you cited two things that I would like to bring together. First of all, you cited the fact that it's a truth-telling meeting where the individuals have to say to themselves squarely. You also cited the comments of the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal. And it just brings to mind a question of how much truth-telling really happens among them when they get into those meetings, particularly in the light of the NBS reports about multidimensional poverty in that state, in the state of that's governed by Governor Aminu Tambuwal. More than 90% of the people in the state are said to be below the poverty line, and a number of other states in the north like that, and in the south, virtually every state in the country. So I'm wondering how much of truth-telling, how much of looking into each other's eyes and telling the bitter truth they would not hear from anywhere else could have helped to change those figures, or at least lay the foundation that the next administration can build on.
Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of frank exchanges that go on in that council. A lot of frank exchanges, and each of the governors, of course, have their local issues. But oftentimes in the council, they talk about, national issues. And even though the council also has, talk about, for instance, human capital development, has a unit that does that, that tries to provide advisory for the governors, tries to build capacity on these issues, try to encourage, you know, a particular direction in dealing with the issues of poverty, in dealing with the issues of education, in dealing with the issues of health, you know, on an ongoing basis, you know. So what I can say to you is that, yes, you know, there is a lot of truth-telling, and yes, there are also issues, you know, in the states, just like across the country. But the point is that you have a council, the NEC, in the last 8 years that has clearly, you know, taking up the task of addressing some of these very tough problems. Like, look at the National Livestock Transformation Program, you know, that came out of NEC. It took the arduous and tedious working of the governors, setting up several committees and ad hoc committees, traveling to all the states that were affected by the farmer-herders clashes. The governors, the vice president set up a subcommittee, I think that was headed by the governor of Ebonyi, Engineer Umahi, with other governors. I think about 9 of them were on that subcommittee, and went to all the states that were involved. They had to go there, met the different communities, the farmers and the herders, brought them together and developed a report, you know, which everybody virtually on that council agreed to. Now, it wasn't easy to come to that kind of conclusion, but the council managed to develop such a consensus on the issue, and clearly we have seen that that report, that National Livestock Transformation Program, is the way out, and some of the plan are already being implemented as we speak, you know, and clearly giving the direction of how to resolve the problem. So the council have done quite a bit of very serious work, and a few of the outcomes, you know, bear this truth out.
Well, on a lighter note, Mr. Akande, a quick examination of the Vice President's intellectual ambassadorial work. And I'm quoting from a speech he delivered at the NIPSS. He says, when the forces of primordial division and polarization are harnessed for the sake of electoral gain, the venom of such devices remains and continues to poison communal relations, setting neighbors against neighbors. And just listening to him in that soundbite that we heard earlier, he talked about the need for political actors to commit to ethical revolution. So how much of his, you know, intellectual advocacy in shaping political behavior and reorientation can change potentially, you know, the nature of our politicking and national cohesion, even beyond his office as Vice President?
Yes, thank you. So I think in my view, one of the things that the Vice President has done very creditably is being a voice of reason, you know, all through, especially when it speaks to the Nigerian elite, be it the political elite and business elite, even religious elite. Is being a voice of reason to say that, look, I mean, it is important for us elites to get these things right. He has advocated over and again for an elite consensus to determine, look, this is the minimum that we ought to be able to deliver as leaders to our people, whether be it in the area of the electoral system, whether be in the area of even an ethical, of which you speak, the ethical standard. What are the minimum, whether it be in the area of justice, you know, social justice, whether it be in the area of even delivering, you know, the empowerment to the people, transforming the lives of the people. A lot depends on the elite. And Professor Oshibajo has been that voice calling for that that consensus, that understanding, saying that, look, we have to make sure that as elites, we are the ones that remove the differences. We are the ones that try to emphasize the things that bring us together. We are the ones to talk about the unity, the oneness, the strength in our diversity. That is what he has represented. And I think, you know, this is the way forward for our country. It's clearly a great country, and we just have to understand, you know, especially those of us that are elites, that we need to have consensus on all the major issues, be it human capital development, be it economic development, be it political engagement. You know, we need to understand that, look, there is a minimum that the people expect us to deliver, because we have been privileged not only by our exposure to education and other privileges that has come the way of those of us that are in leadership positions, but that privilege itself confers on us a responsibility to transform the life of the people. And that is why for the Vice President, it's all about the people. It's all about the people. And that is what he says every time in all his meetings. He says to people in government that, look, whatever we are doing, this is a country of 200 million people. If government is going to do a program, you can't be talking of a few hundred thousands. You know, you're talking about 200 million people. We should be talking in the millions, in the tens of the millions, in the hundreds of millions, you know, so that we can actually impact the life of the people. Because those people are looking up to us.
Mr. Akande, you know, as you speak, my mind is going back pre-2023, you know, when the Vice President also threw his hat in the ring, offered himself up to be President of Nigeria. It almost sounds like as if you're campaigning all over again. And, you know, that was a very interesting period, because people wondered for many years before that time if he was going to run or not. And he took his time before he eventually made a decision to run. We saw that he visited the president, and he said that he had, you know, told the president of his intention to run. People were wondering whether his principal was going to endorse him and perhaps raise his hand up as the person whom he was supporting. From what we saw, that didn't quite happen. It would seem that President Buhari stepped back and let everybody, you know, do what it is that, you know, that they wanted to do in terms of canvassing for votes at the primaries. His speech at the primaries was quite... was one for the books. People still remember quotes from that particular speech which he gave that night. But looking at what transpired within the party, you know, the fact that eventually he wasn't the one who was picked, people felt that, oh, he as vice president, since the person who brought him into politics, more or less, I mean, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the one who was also interested in the race. People felt, oh, he ought to have stepped back, etc. How was it managing the politics around that at that moment, and also the aftermath of it? You know, did he have any reservations as to, you know, the decision of his party? You know, of his party members, and how did he also affect his own standing, perhaps within Lagos and Ogun State, where his base lies?
Well, you know, I think for him, and this is also my own view, by the way, what was important is to take an action or whatever step you're going to take in the best interest of the people. You know, so public interest is the overriding factor, which was why I personally believe that, look, you couldn't have been vice president for 8 years, and the kind of vice president that you were, you know, how much work, you know, that has been done, and the level of understanding that you have acquired in terms of what has to be done, and the capacity that you have demonstrated when you had the opportunity to act for the president. Yeah, now you can't have all of that, and then, you know, and of course you have inspired, you know, tens and 20s, you know, scores of millions of Nigerians by your leadership style. People see you as a representation of a new Nigeria, that with this guy, there is a new Nigeria is possible. Now, all of that can be in place, and then you just walk away and say, you know what, I'm not going to run. No, 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 you don't do that. You have to stand up. You have to put yourself up. And once you stand up, you put yourself up, it's up to, at that level, your party to decide, what they want to do. And the decision has been taken, and then you move on. And that's exactly what the vice president has done. You do what you needed to do, what was the right thing to do, in her view, clearly, and clearly in the view of many Nigerians, and the matter is disposed. And once the matter is disposed, you continue your job. And when you finish your job, there's still something that is going to come. I'm sure you heard what Mo Ibrahim said in Kenya last week about how respected, the global community, how much respect the global community has for him. So this is what you do, Mark. You do your part, and then you move on.
Okay, we do know that as we begin to wind up, we know that the vice president has a lot of invitations waiting for him out there for lectures here and there. But just one about food and nutrition. We understand the Minister of Information is organizing a food and nutrition media team. That used to be in the office of the vice president. Food and nutrition used to be in the office of the vice president. What happened?
Well, I don't know specifically what this is about, but the Minister of Information is the head of communications in the federal government. So he can, he's the one in charge of public communication generally.
But is the office of the vice president involved?
Yeah, but there is a human nutrition, the National Nutrition Council. Or National Council on Nutrition, National Council on Nutrition, that is headed by the vice president. So I'm sure that that campaign is going to be done in collaboration with us. But the Minister of Information is in charge of communication for the federal government.
Okay, Mr. Laolu Akande, so the Oshibaja strikes, in your closing statements, the Oshibaja strikes, of what essence, what good would it be to the Nigerian out there?
Well,
seeing that the people that wrote that book, and Bukola mentioned it, 25 or thereabout?
Yeah.
25 people, professionals from different walks of life, from different parts of the country, came together to compile that, north, south, east, and west. How's that helping Nigeria?
Well, what thrills me about the book is the fact that all these journalists and writers, including many accomplished professionals, came together on their own to say that, look, it's important to document what the vice president has done. It's important to give a clear indication that this guy, is somebody that inspires us. That was what thrilled me, and just looking through the names of the people, that authored several chapters there, you will see people from all directions, all angles of this country, and it's just encouraging. For me, I find it as an encouragement that people know what the vice president has done. Clearly.
It's good, Mr. Akande, it's good that you are encouraged, because I'm not sure you're done serving your country yet. Thank you so much. Mr. Laolu Akande is a Senior Special Assistant, Media and Publicity to the President in the Office of the Vice President. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, and Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment. Just stay with us.
conversation, as you've seen there, is concerning the digital switchover in Nigeria to make broadcast practice and the signals you receive at home a lot better than whatever else we've ever had in the country today. But why are there so many issues seemingly unresolved? A number of people have been hearing about this whole digital switchover since as far back as 2006. And then there are other issues. So what are the realities? What are the issues? What are the bottlenecks? We have with us here the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria, BON, Dr. Yemisi Bangboshe. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, we hope to have the Director General of the Nigeria National Broadcasting Commission as well, NBC, Balarabe Ilela. We hope he'll join us in due time. We are expecting that he will. But let's begin with you, Dr. Bangboshe. Just what are we dealing with here? Tell us the backstory of this whole digital switchover thing. If memory serves me right, research still says that this conversation began sometime in the 2000s, early 2000s, 2006 perhaps, and 20 what years after we're still talking about it. What is going on?
Well, thank you very much. The issue of digital switchover actually started many years ago, precisely in 2007, there was a decision at the level of International Telecommunication Union, ITU, that the spectrum being occupied by stations on analog can actually accommodate more through digitization. And as a result, there was a decision at the international level that broadcast stations, most especially television, should be digitalized, which means that part of the frequencies will be made available for the use of other sectors. Decision was that by 2012, or at latest by 2015, every country should migrate from analog to digital. As a matter of fact, Nigeria set 2015 for the year that it will eventually migrate from analog to digital. But today, I think we are still battling with the issue of migration. Of course, there are a lot of benefits in it because there are opportunities of having more stations, clearer pictures, ability to generate even more employment because you are going to have stations in multiple folds. The one that the frequency that analog is occupying can actually, for example, the one that your organization is occupying may be good enough to produce extra 12 stations. So that was the intention of the world. But this particular decision was taken at the level of the International Telecommunication Unions, and it's not peculiar to Nigeria. And we have so many countries that have actually migrated.
Just one quick question, Dr. Bangboshe. Help people understand exactly what is going on. As you said, we've had 3 deadlines actually that have been shifted, and this information was made available by the DG of the NBC himself, that we've tried to digitize since 2000. The effort began 2006. We've shifted deadlines 2012, 2015, and even 2017. All of that has happened. But just was it last year or 2 years ago, there was that set-top boxes, or I don't know what we'll call it, pilot initiative that was taken in a number of states, about 6 or thereabout states in Nigeria, where about 1 million set-top boxes were said to have been disbursed. What was that phase of the process, and why are we still talking about this digital switchover challenge now?
The problem is the inability of the federal government to fund digitization as expected. The white paper, the only legal framework that we can point out to today for the digital switchover is the white paper issued by federal government since 2012. Up till now, there have been no enabling act of the parliament to actually stipulate the process of digitization. But that white paper, stipulated what to be done, the processes to go through, and it equals, actually recommended that there should be an act of parliament to make it become law. The problem is that the federal government, up to now, has not been able to provide the necessary fund, and again, the political will to do it is equally not there from the angle of the federal government. I was part of the first one that was carried out in Jos in 2015. I think early 2015. Late 2015 or early 2016. I can't remember precisely. From Jos up to date, they have been able to digitize just only 7 states. That is including Abuja, Plateau, FCT, Lagos, Kwara, I think Enugu, and Osun. But all these places that I've referred to, the signal can only, and I think Kano, the signal can only be accessed in the state capital.
In all these states?
In all these states. And whereas it is clearly stated that before there will be total analog switchover, the digital coverage must at least be 80% of where the analog transmission was reaching before we can say total switchover from analog to digital. So today, one thing is very clear. It is not that NBC doesn't have qualified people that can do it, but the political will from government, the interference from government, from maybe Ministry of Information, has not been able to make it to happen as expected, and is actually drawing back broadcasting in Nigeria.
You had cause recently to express reservation about the planned sale of 600 megahertz spectrum band, and I'd like you to shed more light on that. But what immediately comes to mind is there a conflict of jurisdiction in that regard? Because, is it the ICC, the NCC that's supposed to carry that out, if at all it should be, or the NCC, or the NBC, yeah?
Is it there is even a middle organization between NCC and NBC. Understand? NCC is in the terrain of the telecommunication as the regulator, and the NBC regulates the broadcast sector. So the two have their own frequencies that they use. Frequencies about electromagnetic waves that are assigned to various sectors. So there are frequencies that are primarily assigned to broadcasting, and there are some other frequencies that are assigned to other sectors as well. Like the military, yes, the military, and a host of others. But the decision, the allocation of the one that belongs to broadcasting is basically that of the National Broadcasting Commission. But there is a council called National Frequency Management Council that is managing the issue of frequency between the NCC and NBC. Now, we just discovered that National Communication Commission, advertised on its own website the sale of the 600 megawatts. And this 600 megahertz basically hosts the television stations on UHF channels 35 upward, which means all stations within the range of 35 UHF channel upward will be affected with the sale of this spectrum. And we are now saying, number one, the decision, because maybe what they are latching on is that one, we have been talking about digitization. Maybe they thought that we have effected digital switchover, which is far, far, far from the truth. Because even the white paper said it clearly that before there can be any sale of the frequency, we must have achieved that digital switchover. before we say, okay, we switch off the analog. It is when we switch off the analog and then we switch over to digital that has covered the entire country. That is when we can be talking about the sale of the frequency. But in this case, we have not even achieved 2% of the digital switchover. And NCC is now advertising to sell the frequency that is hosting those.
Is it within the jurisdiction of the NCC to carry out that sale in the first place?
It is not. But I think NCC is saying that maybe because the National Frequency Management Council is more of NCC than NBC. Actually, there is a council, and we discovered that even in that council, it is skewed in favor of NCC. I think NBC has just only one representative in that council. But our own argument is that, one, the decision on co-assisting of the telecom and broadcasting on the same frequency is a decision that has not been taken at the level of International Telecommunication Union.
Which conversation is to continue on in October of this year.
October this year.
But you know, the challenge, another challenge in that regard, my apologies for caller, another challenge in that regard is, I mean, you mentioned something about government's political will, and believe me, each time I hear government in any statement, I'm wondering, let's decrypt it. Who is this government that we are talking about? Definitely it's not the office of the president. It is not the office of the Minister of Finance or Minister of Foreign Affairs. It is someone in government that we are talking about. So when you say government does not have political will, which office of government are we talking about? Then add to that the fact that it would seem like two government agencies, the NBC and the NCC, are at variance. Aren't they supposed to be on the same page?
Yeah, they are supposed to be at the same page. The government that we are talking to, you see, to provide fund for the digital switchover is the responsibility of the government, which government is accepted in its own white paper. So the allocation of the
which agency is taking responsibility of that funding?
It is through NBC. Government is supposed to provide fund for the National Broadcasting Commission to carry that
through the NBC.
Through the National
Consequently,
Broadcasting
you are talking about the government you're talking about here now is the Office of the Minister of Information.
Yes, through the Minister of Information.
However, you've also mentioned the fact that the NCC is involved, which is in the Office of the Minister of Information of Communication. Okay,
yes.
so those two do not yet agree with him.
Yes. So those two, I mean, basically the Minister of Information as the supervising ministry of National Broadcasting Commission supposed to be the one to facilitate that fund to NBC, as it were. How
long has that law been?
Oh, since 2012. The white paper came out since 2012. And up to now, we have not been able to achieve 2% of digital switchover.
So when you say that we've not been able to achieve 2% of digital switchover, that means that the coverage, even though we've launched in 7 states, the coverage is still at 2% of each of those states. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, what I'm even saying is that totality of the entire country. Okay. Because you see, we have how many local government? 774 local government, and up to date, the number of local government that we have digital coverage is less than 90. So if you look at 90 over 774, what percentage is that? And it's supposed to cover everywhere. And you know, basically, television is the major source of information, public enlightenment, and they depend on television, most importantly, on entertainment, which means that if the spectrum that holds majority of television stations in Nigeria is allowed to be sold just like that, without digital switchover, then it means that all those stations will have problems, and we cannot keep quiet and allow that to happen. That is what Bond is saying.
Okay.
Just one more question before we head to Abuja. Assuming we even achieve 90% of the digital switchover today, but internet subscription coverage is at 104 million. That's a 2021 figure, by the way. If we do not achieve at least 50% of internet coverage across the country, how will this impact on the digital switchover at the level that we're in?
It will impact negatively, But let me equally say this. You see, Bond is only fighting for everybody, not even for the broker sector. The sale of that megahertz, 600 megahertz, will affect even churches and mosques and even the entertainment industry. Anyone that is using wireless microphone will be affected. There will be distortions, there will be interference, even if they ask them to cohabit. So negatively, it will affect the entire country.
I hope it doesn't affect hospitals. Marco, you have a question?
Indeed, I mean, my questions have since changed, but I'm just wondering, it would seem that, yes, Bon perhaps has been doing a lot of lobbying and voicing his protest behind the scenes. It is the one in charge, the organization for broadcast organizations. And I'm wondering how come it is that, you know, this matter is just coming to the fore. Why has this protest not been louder than it has been, considering the grave implications it will have for over 80% of people who currently get their TV terrestrially?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, there is channel of communication. There's a process that you need to follow. Otherwise, you'll be termed as being against a particular individual or against a particular organization. Bond noticed this since 2021. And Bond wrote a series of letters to the National Broadcasting Commission, calling the attention of National Broadcasting Commission to this. First, the 800 megahertz was sold. 700 megahertz was sold, and we call the attention of NBC to this, to call an all stakeholders conference where we'll be able to look into this in totality. But it is the purview of NBC to actually call that meeting or to make necessary representation to government, knowing that Bond is a non-governmental organization. So we call the attention of NBC. For example, there was, I think sometimes last year, NBC issued a letter asking some stations that I don't want to mention those stations on air, asking them to vacate the channels that they are occupying. Bond had to write a serious letter of protest to the Minister of Information and to the DG of NBC, telling the two agencies of the consequences it will have upon the entire country. Now, having sold 700 megahertz, 800 megahertz, now they are coming back to sell the 600 megahertz. So it isn't that Bond has been very quiet about it. Bond has actually been making, those agencies responsible for the management of broadcasting in Nigeria to know what was cooking. And now that they thought that having sold the 800 and 700, they can now come back to sell 600. So Bond has been making noise about it. And let me tell you, it is not even about the vacation of the 600 megahertz. The negative consequences is even more. For example, no station in Nigeria today that is operating on high definition. I know that there are so many stations that can meet with international best practices in terms of technical. But because the frequencies are located based on the sale of those, the 800 and 700, they have compressed stations into a limited spectrum, whereby it is very difficult even to move to higher definition, not to talk of ultra higher definition. For example, many of when you compare our own signals, the picture, the qualities, the technical qualities of what we are beaming out in Nigeria with some other areas, countries where they have achieved digitization, where they allowed their spectrum for broadcasting, you see that there's a big difference in the technical qualities of what we are pushing out. Because we are still on standard deviation, not even on higher definition. So, which means even compressing, moving them gradually will limit the quality of television programming in Nigeria.
Well, I'm looking at the implications, and they're really, really grave. But you've spoken about how you protested and the 800 megahertz spectrum was sold. Even though you protested as well, the 700 megahertz spectrum was also sold as well. Today is the last day of the bid for the 600 megahertz spectrum, which the NCC is hoping to auction very soon. How do you know that this, because of the fact that they have been able to sell the rest and nothing happened, why do you think that this will not go the same way? And if this protest is not listened to, you know, what other options would it leave an organization such as yours, considering the implications that it has for the broadcast industry?
Well, I want to believe that it will not be sold. For example, we've written to, the agencies of government to even ask the question, why now? Why the hurry? Why is it that the outgoing government is trying to sell? For what purpose? For what is it that they want to achieve? I mean, we can all, come to a conclusion. Why shouldn't the outgoing government leave it, even for the incoming government to determine? Because you see, the issue of spectrum is just the natural gift that God has given to the whole world. And it is managed by each country through the supervision of the International Telecommunication Union. I know of countries that, when they got it right, the sale of the spectrum bailed them out of the economic recession. So it is a resource that, if it is well managed, if it is properly managed and handled in a very transparent manner, it is capable of providing enough resources that can bail Nigeria out of the economic doldrum that we find ourselves. So why the hurry? Why are they selling now that the current government is about to leave? So that leaves much to desire on that aspect. So that is why we are crying, and we are telling the whole public that it should be stopped. It shouldn't be sold. Let everybody sit together. Let's wait until the final determination of the International Telecommunication Union. Let's take, for example, if at the level of ITU meeting that is going to hold November this year, the issue of cohabiting of the frequency between the broadcasting and telecommunication is rejected. So what happens? How do we recover that frequency back? And why are they now pushing broadcasting that owns that spectrum originally, primarily? Why are they trying to push broadcasting out of that spectrum? So at the end of the day, it means that if it is sold to telecom, the broadcasting will now become a tenant in his own house. Because before you can do anything, you need to apply to telecom that they have sold it to, and you need to pay. And ditto to all churches, to all mosques, even musicians that are using wireless microphone. So it's a big issue, which I want to believe that we should bring to the front burner so that it is not sold just like that.
Well, you have expressed optimism that it will not be sold, but peradventure that it is. What options does it leave you? Yeah,
then at the end of the day, the bond will go to court. We have been telling NBC, the fact of the matter is that, you see, bond is the umbrella body of the broadcast station, and is a civilized body. We discuss this issue at the level of General Assembly, at the level of CWC. We had the CWC on Tuesday, where all options are put on the table. But we are having the assurances of NBC that it should not be sold. And that is the reason why we are thinking that, since NBC has equally written, protesting that this should not happen, I want to believe it will not happen. But if it happens, then we go to court so that we recover it back.
Well, right now we have Juliana. Just a quick break away from this conversation. We'll come right back to it. Our correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, is standing by in London to give us a quick update on the upcoming decision about the former Deputy President of the Senate. Juliana, please go ahead. What's the update?
Well, good morning. I'm live here at the Old Bailey, where, as you quite rightly said, within the next couple of hours, we're expecting the sentencing of Ekweremadu, the former Deputy Senate president who just a couple of weeks ago was found guilty of a significant organ harvesting plot alongside his wife, Beatrice, and a middleman, Obina Obeta. This case spans two jurisdictions, of course, both Nigeria and here in the UK, and it has generated a lot of press. Now, just to remind our viewers, if I can quickly, because of course this is an unprecedented case, that's exactly how prosecutors here in the UK have described it. It is a landmark verdict under the Modern Slavery Act of 2015, and they have been found guilty of exploitation and bringing in a 21-year-old street trader into the United Kingdom in February last year, offering him a reward of between £2,000 and £7,000 so that his kidney could be used for their daughter Sonia. Sonia, of course, was also on trial here, but she was found not guilty, still suffering from a very debilitating kidney disease. This individual first handed himself into police in the summer of last year, and then, of course, there was the arrest, and that's when the media first started to know about this case. Fast forward to where we are today, and it is going to be a significant presence we're expecting already just around the corner from where I'm standing. We already are starting to see people queuing up for the public gallery. Of course, we know that several senators have flown in. Just on Wednesday, we heard from the current Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, who, alongside many other political class, have written to the Crown Prosecution Service, as well as the Central Clerk at the Central Criminal Court, pleading for leniency. In fact, Femi Gbajabiamila did actually describe the senator as being a brilliant lawyer, a distinguished public servant, and a dedicated family man. It's just started raining quite heavily here, as you can see, and I expect the dampness of the day to continue because, according to some reports, the senator could be getting a very lengthy prison sentence, up to about 10 years. And again, you know, this has caused a lot of outrage, particularly if you look at the timing. You know, President Muhammadu Buhari just arrived in the country a couple of days ago to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III. It would be an embarrassment for him and for the political class of Nigeria, including the former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who's also written to the British courts. If indeed today the senator is given the full maximum sentencing of 10 years, of course I am going to be in court, and as soon as that sentencing is out, we'll bring it to Channels TV News.
All those pleas that have gone out, I mean, you've mentioned former President Obasanjo, you've mentioned President of the Senate, and there are others, you know, from all other parts of the world. The ECOWAS Parliament, the International Human Rights Commission, and the rest of them have put a word in or the other. I mean, given what you said, an unprecedented case, an unprecedented ruling to be made today, do you see that in any way shifting the needle?
Unfortunately not. I sat throughout this trial when it ran over the past 7 weeks, and what the prosecution were able to do quite successfully, led by Hugh Davis, KC, is to pitch the Ekweremadus as corrupt, as let's call them a Goliath versus the street trader being a David. I think that also something that needs to be taken very much into account is the voice of the diaspora. And when it comes to the way Britain do view Nigeria, of course, they do listen to the diaspora. And if you cast your minds back to when this case first came into the public domain, there was a significant amount of protesting. And let's not forget that the senator, Mr. Ekweremadu, has not been somebody who hasn't been away from the news. I know that he has faced several controversies across the globe, most notably in Germany a couple of years ago. And there are a lot of people on social media that do feel as if justice has been served. Having said that, the Ekweremadus are potentially victims of circumstance, right? You know, all they have tried to do is get the kidney for their very sick daughter, who, by the way, was being cared for by her mother until she was taken down to the dock in March when she was found guilty. When listening to the testimony from some doctors, they said they didn't even know if a kidney transplant would save her. So unfortunately, I am not convinced that these pleas for clemency will be accepted by the court. However, there is always the God factor. And of course, he is a very significant man. And when you do have, as you were saying, ECOWAS, you have senior politicians in Nigeria all pleading your case, potentially there could be some light at the end of the tunnel.
It seems...
Juliana, we have to thank you. We are clearly running out of time. Juliana Olayinka, correspondent of Channels Television in London. We know that as soon as the news is out, you will certainly share with us and we'll share with the world. Thank you for your reporting. All right, well, I believe that, Nyota, you have questions for Dr. Bangboshe as we continue the conversation on digital switchover.
Just one question, and seeing that time is of the essence. First of all, the target Nigeria set for itself was November 2022. That was as of July 2021 to switch digitally to the digital switch over. Now we've gone past that deadline, and the processes indeed have started and almost completed in some states. Plateau, Abuja, Kwara, Osun, Enugu, Lagos, Kaduna, Kanu. There are those who wonder, yes, you've talked about the spectrum being sold, and today, Marco mentioned that today is a deadline for that bid, and you're hoping it won't be sold. But there are those who have argued in different quarters that BORN is actually one of the challenges that they have to Nigeria switching over, because the members of BORN are contrary to that switchover, seeing that government is not playing its own part. Put that on one side. Come to the part of the government where some funds have been released for the digital switchover. But those funds, nobody has an idea exactly the status of the funds or the DD team, what the status is. How do we get to a solution or a resolute point where Nigeria, and indeed broadcasting in Nigeria, cannot be hindered going forward?
Thank you very much. You see, the problem with us in Nigeria is that we don't listen to the professionals or people that can do it right or make suggestions that you can get it right. BORN gave a position paper to National Broadcasting Commission in 2022 on how to achieve it. In fact, we recommended that we either use the Ghanaian model, or we use that of South Africa. Ghana started far, far, far behind us, and Ghana has achieved it. And what was the method? They face it region by region. You complete a region, then you hand over the spectrum to government, it is sold. You face the second region, and the same way they did it in South Africa and in some other countries. So we've made our own recommendation. And again, we have equally suggested that, okay, let's call everybody together. Let's analyze. Let's see how far we have gone about it. What are the challenges? You see, a lot of encumbrances are put even on the issue of digital migration. A lot of, things that will eventually bounce back on the broadcast industry are put there. Let me tell you, for example, as at 2012, 2015, in fact, it was recommended that government should subsidize the set-top boxes, because the public may not have enough fund to buy. As at that time, that they were even suggesting that government should subsidize, the rate was about 3,005 or 2,000 or thereabout. Now for the sector boxes manufacturers now, for you to buy one, it cannot be less than 20,000. So how many Nigerians will be able to afford that? And the federal government or government is not even ready to give any subsidy in that regard. So there are a number of issues. The way out is for stakeholders to sit down. Let's call everybody. Let NBC be the one to champion. For example, now that we are suspecting that because NBC is a government agency, and NBC is not willing to make it open or to have an open confrontation with another government agency. We are just suspecting that, and that is why Bond is now calling for an all stakeholders conference, which Bond is going to call very soon, so that we can reassess how far we have gone. For example, I'm in Lagos, you are in Abuja. You can ask even the elites about digital. How many even know about digital switchover?
It's quite interesting that you would bring that up now, particularly responding to Bukola's question the other time about how many states are covered and the percentage is even less than 2%, you say. But I remember that it was in 2016 it was reported that the federal government said that they licensed 13 indigenous DSO set-top box manufacturers.
Yeah.
Where are they?
Well, they have been battling. They have been battling.
No productions
even with government. Yet. Yeah, they produce, but you can only use when you have all the facilities to connect the set-top boxes. Okay. For example, this is Lagos. There are just only two cells, that is 2 transmitters. In Lagos, cited at Surulere.
So essentially the challenges are numerous.
Yes, it doesn't cover here. Well, it doesn't cover Lagege, talk less of Ikorodu.
This conversation has to continue, Dr. Bangweshi, because,
because there's also the enlightenment leg of it.
Absolutely.
Which Nigerians should know about.
The costs and everything.
Yes.
Because we have digital TVs, we don't have digital switchover. I don't even understand
how the set-top boxes work.
All right, Dr. Yemisi Bangweshi, Executive Secretary, Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time today, and we most certainly will have you back.
Thank you very much.
This conversation
can I use this opportunity to let the public know that we've extended the voting on this the Nigerian Broadcasting Award.
Okay.
The voting supposed to have closed yesterday, but the steering committee met and decided it should be extended to the 10th of May so that we will afford the public, because public has a certain percentage, I think 40%, to decide the winners.
Yeah, we'll send the invoice to your office. Thank you so much. That's so much of the program we can take today. Thank you so much for being a part of our morning and for allowing us to be a part of yours. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a splendid weekend.
And I am Bukola Koka. Have a beautiful weekend ahead.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And thank you so much for watching. Just to mention that we were supposed to have the Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission here with us, but for one reason or the other, he couldn't make it, and his representative couldn't make it as well. But thank you, and we wish you a fantastic weekend. I'm Neil Taigwe.